everybody take a seat.
Are you stopping, Reg?
Right, well, welcome to you all to the start of this winter's evening talks. I'm not going to introduce the speaker, I'm going to leave that to Peter Moore. And but just to say, if you haven't paid, because I arrived rather late, will you pay in the beer interval, please? And so a very warm welcome to you all, and I'll say a bit later in the beer break what's going on after this. But one thing is there are a lot of older people here whose faces I don't recognise. So if you've not been to one of these sessions for many, many years, I hope you'll make yourself known to other Oreads here this evening. So, Peter, on you go.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. It's a big crowd. It's a good turnout. More seats than normally used. One of the things I've been made aware of by Paul and the involvement with this is names that I vaguely heard of from years and years before, so I never really thought about them. But it's nice to know that we've got a contingent of the Axon family. Tom and Nan, if you put your hands up, yeah, they've come, and Tom there, young Tom, grandson of the original, he's come all the way from Falmouth, yeah. So yeah, and he may be going back tonight. So he's pretty keen, yeah. But it's good to see everybody. Paul, a few years ago, asked me if I would digitise some of his slides, which I did, and basically the idea then started to grow about bringing more of the story of the club along, and we've also involved Harry Pretty's daughter Laura. Hand up, Laura, because Laura had got a load of archive pictures of Harry, so it's been very, very good that we've managed to pull some of these together. Paul has been on a lot of Harry's events over the years, and so between them they've created this story, and it's just nice to know that Paul was here as one of the two remaining members of the club who were here on that founding day, and Paul's going to tell his story about how the club came to be and how it's got to this point. It's not our fault.
Well, Tom says tell them anything because there's nobody there will remember.
That's true. Just a point to be aware, recordings are being made tonight. I hope nobody's got a problem with that. Is everybody okay with that? Yeah, fine. So there will be a recording of it. Dave Pennington's the other founder member that can't get because of health problems and being so far away. And it was a request by Janet that we can try and record this, and that's the whole idea behind it. And Tom and family are obviously recording for their own purposes. But anyway, I'll pass you over to Paul. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Oread members, prospective members, anybody else who's gate crashed in or camp followers, welcome. I say right from the start that I have a few notes, and these notes carry a health and safety warning. That is a health and safety warning for me, because should you at any time during this evening see me trying to drop off to sleep over them, please give me a nudge, because I really should not be out this late at night. And then I think, Oreads, mountain nymphs, I ask you. I start to worry every time we gather in any sort of number. I start looking for the sort of semi-divine maidens, I wonder what they are. The young beautiful women which is a bit difficult to sort out with all these blokes about. And at the lower end of the descriptive scale for nymphs, an immature form of insects. Yeah, it worries me. I don't quite know how it fits in. But whatever you come as tonight, whatever you think you are, or if you don't think you're actually a nymph at all, welcome anyway. Let's get on with it. It struck me that over the years in the Oread Club there have been some very great orators. I have to tell you from the start that I'm not one of them. I looked at the qualifications and the achievements of some of the speakers in this series. I don't have anything like that to offer. Tonight is just a response to the calls we get from Rob now and again to fill in the lecture circuit. What was I going to say next? Any idea?
How did we come to be here?
No, we haven't got to that yet.
Keep him in his place.
Tonight has been called Looking Back. It's been done before, and I should have thought by now you're probably thoroughly bored with it. But what's been going on over the last few weeks is that, well, it reminds me of that rather laid-back programme that's on television at the moment. Mortimer and Whitehouse are on fishing. And what's been happening is, this last few weeks, is it's Gardiner and Amour who've gone gaga trying to dig up interesting bits from Oread history that might amuse you to this evening. It's in several bits. The first bit is that we're going to go back to day one of Oread. I don't know what you think about that, whether you think the club started in Nottingham or Derby or whatnot. I'm going to prove that it started in Burton-on-Trent so that you're absolutely sure. And after that, when we've introduced a bit about the very start of the club, it will then evolve into, well, what was recently called the title of an Oread Zoom lecture, a ramshackle collection of photographs. And that's what this is. Once we've dealt with the start of the Oread, it will go to pictures of Oread members, of groups, in no particular order. And what I find is that some of the pictures have captions on and some do not. We've got to recognise these people. So if you see someone you recognise, or you have an anecdote or something like that, please do call it out, and then we can have a members' evening like Oread members' evenings used to be. Another bit of audience participation. A couple of acknowledgements now before we start. All the hard work of putting this lot together this evening has been done by Peter. He's been re-photographing and he's been digitising, he's been sending stuff up to the cloud, bringing it back down again, sorted it out. And I do thank you very much, Peter, for what you've done. Frankly, this evening is as much his as it is mine. And secondly, what's already been hinted on is...
Don't blame me.
Eh? You'll get a blame later. I've been privileged to have access to Harry Pretty's records, which I must say are jolly well kept, much better than mine. And all that is through the courtesy of his daughter Laura, who is here this evening, which Peter's already stolen my thunder about, because I was just going to say welcome Laura. Now on top of that, we have some images coming up of Nan and Keith Action. And those images are by courtesy of their grandson Tom, who is also here this evening. Welcome, Tom. And he's brought with him members of his family, too numerous for me to mention. So thanks very much for that, Tom. I think that's about it, so let's get on with it. I've got to thinking, why are we here? Nearly 75 years on. Why Oread? Well, maybe you've come for the beer, and if you have, I hope you enjoy it. But I got to thinking that Oread wasn't called Oread to start with. And at that time in 1949, when it started, there were a number of clubs that we could have joined to pursue our interest. Clubs with quite famous climbers in them, which seemed to come up and be famous for a couple of years, and then disintegrate and fall away, not to be seen again. A lot of the people who were in those clubs eventually ended up joining the Oread. But what was the trigger for us and what kept us going? Well, in the early spring of 1949, a small ad appeared in the columns of the Burton Daily Mail, placed there by our founding father, George Sutton. They invited to look exactly what it says. Burton Mountaineering Club. All interested, write to the Honorary Secretary. And that's what you do. As you sit there tonight, feeling the comfort of your mobile phone in your pocket, just remember that neither George nor anybody who applied had a telephone in the house at that time. Not many people did. They were expensive, and frankly, in those austere days, not long post-war, it was impossible to get one. So we just wrote our little note, sent it off, and eventually something came back which suggested where we might meet. Might be on the bench in the park, might be in a cafe in one of the cinemas if we've got any money, and more increasingly in the tea bar of the Students' Union of Burton Technical College. And as the few who responded started to gather and get to know each other, we started to find out a bit about this chap Sutton. Not long out of the Royal Air Force and working in some clerical capacity for the recently nationalised British Railways. I don't know if anybody remembers the nationalised railways when trains were smoky and dirty and often late, but at least they did seem to run all day, which is a bit more than what they're doing now. George had got a bit of kit. He was actually already a member of the MAM, the Midland Association of Mountaineers, and he knew some of their leading figures, particularly Eric Byrne, who most people will know of. We discovered that George had done something that was quite incredible to us at that stage. He'd been on the train and the bus and been to Wales and actually climbed on the east face of Tryfan. That seemed to us at that stage, you knew nothing about it. It was something to be aspired to. But so far as I was concerned, George had one main attribute for somebody who was trying to start up a mountaineering club. George Sutton actually possessed a rope. Right, so who are these people who responded to his advertisement? Top left you see Harry Pretty, not long out of the forces, where he'd been sent to Canada to train as a pilot. Back in Burton, working as a quantity surveyor. What's happening?
It's all right. Carry on.
And he brought with him his wife Molly, who, as far as I recall, was employed in some clerical or secretarial capacity for a local company. George himself in the middle, and bottom right, now David Pennington. David's an old school friend of mine. We've been out cycling and caving and whatnot for a couple of years before we left school. I think we didn't quite fit the mould of football and pictures on Saturday night. We were off exploring really exotic places like Ashbourne, Matlock, Maple. David had not been long at work. He gained himself an apprenticeship at the local engineering company on Thornhill and Warren. Being a bound apprentice, he was excused from military service until he was 21. There's another chap at the bottom left there, I think we'll look at it in a moment. We've gone out a few more now. Not quite sure we got Harry up again. We'll move on to something much more interesting. It's not working. Anyway!
Can we go back to now?
Oh, look at that now. Yeah. And after the blues, appears Nan Smith. I didn't know much about Nan, I was young. And not very good with women. I didn't ask rather attractive young ladies where they worked or where they lived. She arrived like a ray of sunshine and subsequently went on to climb as well as anybody else. And of course she eventually went on and married Keith. Now, you will see the boots. I don't know how many of you ever had a set of boots like that, but they were the in thing. You wrote your note and got a postal order, and she sent it off to Robert Lorries or Ellis Brigham with an order for some Tricuni 7s, which is the one around the outside, and clinkers to go in the heel. And when they arrived, they took your bag of nails and boots down to the local cobbler who had never seen anything like it before. He showed him the nails, he showed him your boots, he told him with the greatest respect where to put the nails. We were proud of those boots, clanking around on the pavement, particularly at night when we missed the last bus home and we were wandering along the pavements as the pubs were throwing out. As we clanked on the pavements, people were coming out of pubs and shouting, "Been hiking, duck!" So we move on. It's all good and fair, Joe.
You all right? Let me go back.
I'm trying to get back to Keith now.
You have to keep.
Right. Now there's Keith, ex-parachutist. Seldom seen without his camouflage jump jacket. He was working at the local firm of Pirelli. I think he was a rubber technologist, or I stand to be corrected. And he brought along with him his pal Ed Say, who was also a rubber technologist at Pirelli. And Keith and Ed usually went around together and camped in their ex-US Army bivouac, which was a strange device in two halves which button together over the ridge. And there's David. Come round again, I'm not quite sure why.
That's Penlington's progress, isn't it, at Rainster?
No, that's little by little.
Ah.
We're not working
Come on,
it.
Bob. You want Dave? You have to Dave.
The horse and Dave.
You want to go on from Dave?
It's a lot of duplicates.
No. Right, one more. That's it. That's it. Yes. Showing you as a founder member.
Okay. So, who have we got who responded? We've got George himself, Harry, Molly, Nan, Keith, Ed, Dave, and me. One or two others were around, a chap named Frank Ewers, who was a big strong chap who'd just come out of the Merchant Navy. He was with us for a while. I think he liked the Merchant Navy better than he liked Civvy Street, so he went back in. Right. Those are the people who eventually took a room in the offices of the Burton Education Committee and decided to form a club. Burton Mountaineering Club. Doesn't sound very inspiring. What are we going to call it? Seemed to us at that time the thing to do was name your club after a piece of kit. You might be Chikuni Club, Carabiner Club, Long-Standing Rucksack Club. What are we going to be? It eventually dawned on us that although we didn't have the rather fine Grenfell jackets that the pre-war climbers had been using, what were coming onto the market in increasing numbers in the army surplus stores were, forgive me, anoraks. Had a slightly different connotation in those days to what it has now. But this was the must-have thing. This thing you pulled over your head, it's got all the pockets, it's got the hood, and so on and so forth. So although you've got your boots and your rucksack, you must have an anorak. It was new. The garment was new, the word was new. In fact, the word was so new that it intrigued my mother. And she decided she was going to make one. Peter? Where she got the material from in those Austrian days, I got no idea.
There, old boy.
Thank you. And you'll see from the pictures later on, I'm still wearing it about 20 years later. Now, the thing about this at that time is that we had no waterproofing solution. The late Ernie Phillips had some great idea that you could get paraffin wax candles, dissolve them in petrol, and make a waterproofing solution. Sounded to me both hazardous and expensive. However, this particular garment over the years has absorbed so much candle flat and paraffin wax that I think it's probably quite waterproof anyway. So, Anorak Club we became. Anorak Mountaineering Club. Sounds a bit strange these days. Well, that's what we became. We must have got a bit of money together because we had some printing done. On the back of that, we had some objects of the club. Doesn't seem to me to be very different to what we're doing now. Having decided to form a club, we now have a facsimile of Harry Pritch's first membership card. Shows him to be an annual member of the Amour Mountaineering Club. signed by the self-appointed acting secretary and countersigned by the self-appointed acting membership secretary. At that meeting, he'd already, on his own back, enlisted Cyril Machin of the Midland Association of Mountaineers to be the president. He's got George Hobbs as the vice president. Don't ask me how that came about. George Hobbs was George's pal, apparently training him to ride a motorbike. And George Hobbs never came out with us. So how he got on there, I've got absolutely no idea. It was all a bit of a call it a cock-up these days. It seems as at that meeting we wished the Office of Treasurer on to keep action straight away. Keep the books. And I draw your attention to the top right hand side of the page where you see the very first entry on Leaks List, which refers to that first visit to Black Rocks, or Black Rock as they call it now. What has come to light in the last few days is that date has rather more significance than just being the first meet. It seems that quite possibly that was the date of Peter's conception. I deny any responsibility. I don't think I even knew what it was about then.
A big day.
I'm not quite sure why this is in here. I've never seen it before. That was something produced by Dave Williams, digger, who made it from acrylic in a coffee mug. It's end on. And he made one and gave to each founding member or each founding couple. And still sits on my shelf. I think we'll pause on that for a bit and just go to that first meet at Black Rock. And we travelled up there, Burton to Derby by bus, Derby to Wordsworth, and humped away up the hill where Keith and Ed were already in camp. And we went to learn and to look, to find out what it was all about. And there were some very famous people up there that day. There was the famous climber Peter Harding, Wilf White of the Valkyrie, Norman Millward of the Stonish Club, Ernie Phillips, and Ronnie Lee, Ronnie who went on to marry Ernie, and of course cuddly Uncle Nat Allen. And we looked, and we saw what they were doing, which was quite amazing. I think we all tried railway slab and fell off it. If you were lucky, you were invited to tie a bowline on the end of somebody's rope and get dragged up something. Feel the roughness of the gritstone under the fingers for the first time. That was a good weekend. It was that good that we went again a fortnight later, by which time we got Harry and Molly with us. Harry by this time had acquired a new nylon rope, which he announced his intention to abseil on. Now I'm not going to tell you about that. If you don't know about it, have a look in the 50th anniversary journal and see what happened to him when he first jumped off. It was written up by Dave Pennington with some humour. It's a good read. Well, that's about how we started. As far as I was concerned, I'd only been at work about 6 weeks, or 6 months, or something, I can't remember. Having gained an apprenticeship in the engineering department of the Bureau of Bash Ratcliffe and Gretton. And like Dave Pennington, I was also deferred from military service until I was 21. And that just about sums up what was the very start of the club, of which you are now members. I disappeared into the Air Force, and when I came back, we were no longer the Amour Club, we were the Oread Club. And this is the point where we start and disintegrate into images of all sorts of people. I hope if you recognise somebody that I don't, you'll call it out. There's some significance in this. Eric Byrne was a member of the Midland Association of Mountaineering. Through him, we found out about what was going on with the first edition of Guides to Gripstone. Apparently before the war, when Eric was living in Sheffield, he and some of his pals were going all over the Gripstone crags and recording meticulously in pencil what they'd done. Sheffield University were dealing with Rivelin and I think Stanage. Eric had been active on Gardiner, Bircham, Chatsworth. Not much was happening on Froggatt and Kerber because they, at that time, were largely under the control of game wardens. It was only later that they opened up. But Eric went on and on, collating all this information that he could get from various people about climbs on Gripstone edges. And by 1940, all the notes, the manuscript, were in the hands of the printer in Birmingham. But it was war. And then came the air raids. And one night, not only was the printing works gone, but all the manuscript with it. Nothing then happened during the war. But afterwards, Eric was still full of enthusiasm, and he still determined he was going to do this, so we found out what was going on. Gardens, Birchams and Chatsworth he got copious notes to, and he handed those over to the Oread, which gave the Oread some focus. We weren't just going around climbing this, that and the other. We were going to Baslow every weekend, going through his notes, checking the climbs, putting up new routes, so on and so forth. Froggatt and Kerber by then had opened up, and the Valkyrie Club were exploring those. And the notes were gradually coming in again towards the publication of what was in fact the second Gripstone Guide. What happened with us was that we were up to Baslow nearly every weekend, weekend after weekend. We stayed at the Robin Hood, but not in the Robin Hood. In the garden at the back was a huge and ancient bell tent, which we were allowed to doss down in and do a bit of communal cooking. And then in the evening we would go into the parlour of the Robin Hood, sit round the table in a room lit by a single oil lamp, waiting while the landlady, Gladys Ollivant, brought the beer up from the cellar in jugs. And we'd sit round the table and review what we'd done that day and decide what we were going to do the next day. And so we went on and on until we got everything wiped up that we could. I thought if I can see what I'm doing, I'll read you a little bit out of the guide. For the purpose of this guidebook, we're talking about the second guide to Gritstone, Burton Oread Mountaineering Club, led by George Sutton, took over Eric Bynes' existing guide. Come on. In the autumn of 1949. I'm going to praise it up a bit now. And so began an all-out effort on the part of the Oread. Common amongst them were Dave Pennington, George Sutton, Keith Axon, Harry Pretty, Eddie Say, Uncle John Cobley and all. The important bit is that with tremendous enthusiasm, the guide work progressed, climbing took place in heavy, awful life, isn't it? In heat waves, gales, pouring rain, one thing and another, so that in one day of 8 hours of climbing, Bertrand was actually wiped up. That day saw 2 new routes, Keith Axon's Nelson's Nemesis and Horatio Horror. I remember seeing Keith at the foot of Bertrand, looking at the crowd, thinking, how I'm going to do that. Put the phone down. I'm going to throw himself at the crowd. He was a very strong guy, and he was often very good for us there. So, eventually in 1951, the second edition of the Gritstone Guide actually got published. Now, a snippet of information from the acknowledgements from when that guide was put together. These are the acknowledgements. You will see we weren't terribly well resourced. It says, we also have to acknowledge our debt to Miss N. Smith, Miss Winifred Hill, somebody I climbed with in Skye with Eric and Oliver Jones, and Mrs. D.I. Byne, that's Ivy Byne, Eric's wife, all for the typing they did. And to J.G. Brown, whoever he was, for the valuable loan of a typewriter. We were not terribly well resourced at that time, but it did get published. That's what gave the Oread some focus. As I say, we were up there most weekends, and rather than just going climbing anywhere, that's where we went, and got to know a lot of people up there. Eventually we moved out of the Robin Hood belt end and went up to Froggatt's farm. You may have known Ben Froggatt. Who broke my bloody gate? And now we see some early arrivals. George on the left, Jim Kershaw, qualified chemist of some description, who chose to live his life working for about 6 months, and then clearing off on the train to Scotland. He'd probably go somewhere like Dalwhinnie and get off and walk off into the sticks and go and do a bit of gold panning for 6 months. Laurie Burns, who we'll come to again shortly, club treasurer for a long while. Jack Ashcroft at the back with hair. And Dave Widows, I can't remember if he ever joined the club. But, so we're going into early arrivals now. In my opinion, one of the finest alpinists to come out of Derby after the war. Splendid fellow, I think I followed him as president, but it's that long ago, I really can't remember. What was going on? Well, Bullstones was popular, and that was proper Bullstones. I was dotted in some very nice club or something like that. This is Bullstones as we remember it. I opened to off with, I don't know who's on the left. Tony Smith, another bloke I don't know, it's me at the back, somebody bending down, two bending down, no idea. Clive Webb and Peter James. And that's when it was all in pretty good condition. And so we move inside. Clive Webb, Frank Goldsmith, Robert Gavin Pettigrew, already ensconced in the middle. And I suppose it was fairly comfortable. We got settled down. Only to be disturbed by somebody like Kershaw, who would arrive by some devious route over Wicklow, arrive about 1 in the morning and chuck rocks on the roof before he came in. And here we see the first picture of Digger. I'm thinking long. Murray Burns. Murray Burns. Ace vehicle technician. The man who kept the books as treasurer for the best part of 20 years. A man you would think with an orderly mind. He went through rising membership, the leasing of Brinny Wern, and the eventual purchase of Tanya Wilfer. Like I say, a man with an orderly mind. He had a vehicle, the Hillman Husky. It was not unknown for him to drive from his home in Long Eaton to centre of Nottingham to go to the cinema or some such event, and come out 2 or 3 hours later and go home on the bus. I'm not quite sure what had happened to him then. Not best, not Here we got Mike Moore, centenarian, presented with the Legion d'Honneur by the Charge d'Affaires from France. This is a guy who fetched up on a beach in Normandy on D-Day, having lost all his kit. He joined the club in the 50s and was very instrumental, along with Dave Pennington, in obtaining Brinny Wern for us in Pennant Valley. It's significant that in 1951, in March, we hadn't got a hut in Wales. By April next month, not only had we got Brinny Wern, but it was being worked on to convert it into a pub hut. And we occupied that until 1958. Now then, this picture has something significant. God, I'm still wearing the same anorak. Says on summit of Plinlimmon on one of the long walks we did up the centre of Wales. And seeing that picture of John reminds me of something which came to light, or came to Peter's notice, at John's memorial service. It involved Peter's family and another well-known family, another well-known member of the Oread, which we'll come to in a while. It also also involved a great disaster. And I'm going to sit down now and let Peter talk about it.
Right, John was a long-term member of the club, as most of us know. And I think it's quite remarkable, in his later years he was still very active, and Paul and Bob Pettigrew went off to the Himalayas, and John was there with them trekking when he was 80-ish.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable stuff. When John died, he was living in North Wales, where he lived for years and years and years. And there weren't that many people able to get to his funeral because of the distance. And later, Lisa, his now late daughter, organised a memorial service, to which I went along with a lot of others. And when I was there was a twist in a story came about that I had no connections, and yet the person connected to it I'd known for a long time. And basically, if we go back to this is my family history. Go back to that, 1862, that man, my great-great-grandfather, was in charge of all the men down inside a coal mine in the northeast of England. When what happened, the beam engine, which weighed 40 tons, the beam, snapped in two, and in the only shaft down the mine, there were no twin shafts in those days, this changed law on that, 20 tons of that beam engine careered straight down the shaft and entombed the men. And this is an image of, if you can imagine this half out here, this is what went down the shaft. And it was only a 12-foot diameter shaft, and that looks about 10 feet high, something in that sort of order to me. And the effect was that it caved all the stone lining of the shaft in, and the 20 tons of cast iron jammed themselves into about the halfway point. Now, it had entombed in the bottom 204 men, or 200 plus men. In the cave, which is shown in that drawing there, if you look at this one, that would transport 8 men up and down, or coal, or equipment. Anyway, as it was travelling up and down, that 20 tons came careering down, smashed into it, and this is a drawing used for the official inquiry. Photography was in its infancy, and remarkably 3 men survived that. Just unbelievable. But anyway, that was the dilemma that we're in. The men were trapped beneath, and they laboured for 6 days and 6 nights to get those people out of that mine. Now, this is an actual picture of one of the rescue team. Now, the quirky bit of the story was, I was talking to the member who came from the northeast, as my family did, and what was the particularly quirky bit that connected us together in terms of Oreads was that June Telfer, her great-great-uncle, had been one of those rescuers. So my family owed her family a great debt for what they attempted to try and sort out and save the lives, but unfortunately they were all asphyxiated by carbon monoxide, because in those days the mine was actually ventilated by convection currents by using a furnace of coal in the bottom of the mine. But anyway, thank you to June's family for the valiant efforts that they put in. I'll put you back to Paul now. It's just on break time. If
I think so.
so, if anybody wants to top your glasses up, thanks very much.
Young yourself.